So I'm not sure the exact title of this video, but I have a pretty good idea it's going to be something to the degree of Can NVIDIA Be Stopped? And you might think by that title I'm trying to draw you in and say, oh yeah, NVIDIA is just going to keep doing really good, but that's actually not what the point of this video is. I want to dive into the topic of what exactly would it take for NVIDIA to be stopped? To stop growing at the rate it has been, to even go down a little bit. What realistically would it take? I don't think it's very likely to happen. I'm certainly not betting against NVIDIA at all. But with every stock, there is a possibility it goes down, and what actually would need to happen for NVIDIA to get hurt substantially. So let's start with events more localized on NVIDIA and then work our way out. Maybe do some more macro events at the end. So the most obvious thing that would hurt NVIDIA, would see a slowdown, maybe just running sideways for a long time, would be if sales fell. Wow, clear and obvious. If sales are falling, you're not going up in your stock as much in the vast majority of cases. Now, what would it take for that to actually happen? Well, one scenario would be maybe AI isn't as monetized. LLMs are not. You're not able to monetize them as well as we think you will be able to in the future. Like Microsoft, the Metas, those people putting a lot of money into AI GPUs just can't sell the subscriptions for it, can't package it as well as they thought they could. It's just not bringing that revenue well. I see a number of issues with that. First being, you probably wouldn't notice or be able to actually firmly put your foot down and say, okay, this is not generating as much revenue as we thought, unless you're 2 to 3 years out into the future, I think. You aren't going to be able to tell within 1 year from now. 1 year from now, you'd still say, well, we haven't done this, the technology is still developing, and it's true, you can get them a lot more efficient. And that goes into my next point. Maybe it just doesn't develop as well as we think it would, but it doesn't really make much sense if you're paying attention to AI, because probably a large percent of you watching this video have been paying attention to AI, LLMs, whatever you want to call it, and you notice a large increases in just how it is. Like if you're paying attention to the new chat GPT or something like Grok 3. I mean, like last week, I argued with Grok 3 about economic policy because I'm a nerd for like 2 hours. And of course, it wasn't perfect. I think it was wrong. But it was doing a decent job, arguing, bringing up points, summarizing what I said, things like comprehending, right? If you just think back 2 years ago, where it was when ChatGPT was first, I think it was about 2 years ago, it was like really first picking, maybe 3, maybe I'm really old. Really first picking up steam. It's so much better than back then. Even then, it was fairly impressive. So I don't see that, especially once you start getting all the new stuff online. It's just more and more efficient. So that would be, that's an issue. Like I said, that's not going to happen tomorrow. So I think it's very unlikely it's not being able to be monetized. But even if it is, you still got probably another year of riding NVIDIA upward. Now, what about something that could hurt their sales, hurt their stock price, something more immediate, quicker, more than 2 to 3 years out in the future? I've been thinking about this, and so if any of you have something that isn't this, you think's better, I would love to hear it in the comment section. But the only thing that I could think of is if there's some serious design flaw that was discovered in obviously one of their AI GPUs, whatever it may be. I think that's unlikely, but is it a 0% chance? It might be a 0.01% chance, but it could hurt if you have to do a bunch of recalls. That sort of thing has happened. Now, I think it's very, very, very unlikely. And it's definitely not a reason to not invest in NVIDIA, but that's just something I thought of. That could hurt their sales immediately. If you do a bunch of recalls, get refunds, people might be like, oh, this sucks, I'm going to go buy this other thing, which there isn't much, and that kind of leads into the next point. So another fairly realistic thing that could hurt them in the short term would be competition. Now let's look at competition. All right, we're done looking at competition. In all seriousness, there's almost no competition to what NVIDIA does. If there's any, it would be AMD. AMD has been doing meh in this specific field. You could say it's been horrible, but for them as a company, it really hasn't been that bad because they're certainly now much smaller than NVIDIA. So even if they're doing $5 billion a year in AI GPUs, it's still something considering their entire yearly revenue is like 27, 28 billion. But all that to say, AMD has almost no market share in here. Now, they started taking, let's say they had even something like a 15% market share. That really doesn't matter. Not anything realistically for NVIDIA. So you would have to see something to the degree where the only thing I can really see that would actually be maybe realistic is if AMD put out something that was really good and all it did would hurt NVIDIA's margins. Because if you've been paying attention the last couple of years, you know NVIDIA's had some insane margins. I remember some course it was 80%, something just I mean, you don't see that in business world. You just don't, and that has led to obviously incredible growth. That's why we see this straight upward, right? I don't think that's realistic. I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, theoretically, if AMD just really hit a home run with it, that 2% chance they really hit a home run, I still don't see them taking anything close to 20% market share, probably even 15 is a long shot at this point. But it could drive up some maybe companies that would be willing to buy NVIDIA. They're just, we'll get the cheaper option, and it just hurts NVIDIA's margins slightly. I don't think that would, at the end of the day, be enough to draw NVIDIA down. I don't. So when it comes to sales, it's really hard to see it hurting immediately. Like I said, if we have that 2 to 3 years, AI just isn't working out, which I don't think is likely. But it's difficult to find something on NVIDIA's end where they would actually be significantly hurt. So let's take a step back a little bit. I think we've covered most of things that directly come out of NVIDIA. Even some of those things did, but are more closely surrounded by what NVIDIA is doing. If we take a step back and look at the semiconductor supply chain. Now, I'm not even saying it would go down. Maybe it runs sideways, maybe even goes up slightly, just not the rate it was. But if you saw serious supply constraints within the semiconductor supply chain, if you understand it, I would encourage you to do some research if you are heavily invested in NVIDIA. But this is kind of what the supply chain goes. Obviously, just kind of spitballing it. You have TSM, obviously, is who provides to NVIDIA. TSM has been doing very well, not quite at the rate NVIDIA has. Their margins are not as good. They need a lot of CapEx. And TSM buys many products. They buy stuff from ASML, from AMAT, LAM Research. There's plenty of others, but there's this whole chain of command that so if AI is a tool, you have NVIDIA that is the main tool, but then you from TSM maybe you buy the handle and the spade, and then TSM gets all that stuff. It's just a crazy supply chain, and everyone is making a frick ton of money all the way down. So if you just hold NVIDIA, I would encourage you to do some research, take a little bit of a zoom out, because there's great companies up and down that. Like I said, I mentioned a few: ASML, AMAT, TSM, Lam Research. There's one is it KLAC, something like that. And then of course you got at the other end, the Microsofts, the Apples, the Metas. I don't know if Apple's using that much, but there's all these people up and down the supply chain. They're making good money. That's a different point. If you saw a serious damage to that supply constraint, for example, the extreme example, almost all the semiconductors, the advanced ones that NVIDIA uses, are from Taiwan itself. If China decided, I don't care, she's like, yeah, we're invading that thing, we're bombing it to the ground, yeah, NVIDIA's not going to be doing that good. Now, I think that's very, very unlikely, but you could see something less extreme. Let's say, I don't know, ASML just was doing horrible. They had some terrible, and I don't expect that to happen. I own ASML. I like them as a company. But if you saw some serious supply constraints, the issue is all the way up, basically up and down the chain, similar to the quote-unquote monopoly NVIDIA has on the AI GPU market. TSM is the same thing. And then ASML is the same thing on that. So you have three deep of just companies that basically they're the only one that can do the thing. So if you saw some serious damage to TSM, ASML, yeah, it could hurt NVIDIA for a year or two in that way. Now, is that likely? No, because those are good run companies and they want to keep making money. And the thought that something disastrous would happen is unlikely, but it could. So you have some more risk exposure there. Now, lastly, but still important to cover, is some sort of macro event that hurts the entire market and therefore NVIDIA as well. Something like a recession, something we saw in 2007. I'm ruling out the dot-com bubble. I don't think we're in an AI bubble. I've done a video on that if you're curious. My take, maybe a giant war that also leads to, therefore, a recession in the stock market. I'm not even saying that NVIDIA would do bad. They're still an amazing company, but maybe that money that is just pouring into AI GPUs and LLMs, it just kind of fades away. Companies, similar to people, when recessions happen, People get a lot more tight with their cash. Same thing for the companies that are probably buying from NVIDIA. Maybe they decide to still prioritize AI, and that's great. NVIDIA still might be doing good, but if you have a full-on recession like we see in 2007, 2008, it's going to go down. That's just a reality. It will go down. Everything will go down. Everything will go down. People start liquidating 401ks, and that's what really drives everything down. There's not enough money flowing into the market. Everything goes down. Everything, basically, except maybe the most recession hedge sort of thing, maybe like a gold mining stock. But even those might, honestly, depending on how small they are, how big they are, whatever. The point being, serious recession would probably lead to NVIDIA going down. I don't think the company would be an issue. I think they would recover very well. I think that would be an awesome opportunity to buy, but that theoretically could happen. So this is summarize, and I'm not an NVIDIA stock channel. I cover generalized stocks. I like NVIDIA. I think they're a great company. It is pretty incredible. I'm not just doing just to pump them up, but it really is incredible how little of a risk it seems like there is. Of course, there's always risk with any stock, but they're in such a great spot. I mean, their PE really isn't even that high. We're looking at what's our forward PE now? 28. Just incredible. So that's all I got, guys. If you enjoyed, if you're new here, I appreciate if you like and subscribe. I do daily stock content on this channel. I plan to cover NVIDIA in the future, other AI stocks in the future. I love it if you stuck around. It means a lot to me. But anyways, that's all I got. I'll catch you next time.